Have you ever felt like you were fighting something invisible? A nameless sadness, a gnawing anxiety, a war in your mind that no one else could see? Have you ever felt so isolated, so left behind by the world, that it felt like you were screaming in silence and not a single person could hear you? If the answer is yes, then this story today is for you. This is not just a tale from thousands of years ago. This is a promise, a living testament to a power that can cut through the thickest darkness to find a single soul. We are about to journey to a forgotten land, to face a terror that no chains could bind, and to witness an impossible showdown between one man and an entire army. But what happens at the end of this story, the way everything is transformed, I promise it will astonish you. It will redefine how you see deliverance and how you see purpose. Before we dive in, I want to know where you are in the world. Just take a second, look out your window, and comment below what city you're in and what time it is right now. It's an amazing thing to know that across different time zones, we're all here together, in this moment, ready to hear a story that can change everything. All right, take a deep breath. Let's begin. In the library of biblical accounts, there are stories that make us weep and others that make us ponder. But there is one that sends a chill down your spine. A true horror story that reveals the terrifying extent to which evil can reach, and the incredible lengths to which God's love will go to rescue a single soul. Let's paint a picture in your mind. Imagine a region on the other side of the Sea of Galilee, a place men avoided, a rocky hillside covered in tombs carved deep into the stone. This was the land of the Gadarenes. Among the tombs of the dead, there lived a man who everyone feared. He had no name, no clothes, and no control. He wasn't just a man, he was a walking battlefield, a body in ruins, occupied by forces that even the most experienced knew not how to name. No one knew exactly when it started. Some said it was a curse, others that he himself had opened a door he shouldn't have, but no one dared to ask. No one dared to get close. By day, he would wander among the tombs, a naked, wounded animal. In the night, his screams would echo across the mountains, screams so deep, so desperate, they seemed to come from the very pit of hell. It wasn't a human sound. It was as if many voices were speaking at once, as if hell itself had borrowed the tongue of a single man. They had tried to chain him more than once. Strong men had approached him with ropes and shackles, only to be left wounded, humiliated, and haunted. After that, no one else tried. The city fell silent in its fear, accepting this pocket of torment as an untreatable wound, a spirit no one dared to cast out. This was a pain no one could heal, a darkness no one could face. Until a boat appeared in the distance, crossing the Sea of Galilee, and the presence it carried would change everything. The sun was still low as the boat touched the shore of the Gadarenes. The wind carried the smell of damp earth, mixed with the unsettling silence of the place. On that boat was the Son of God. Jesus set foot on the land, and somewhere among the tombs something moved. It wasn't the wind. It was as if hell itself had sensed his arrival. While the disciples were still surveying the landscape with apprehension, a figure emerged from between the rocks, running, stumbling, and screaming. It was the man everyone feared, covered in dust and dried blood, his eyes wide, his body scarred by his own violence. But there was something strange in his run. He was coming with fury, but not with freedom. It was as if he were being dragged from within by forces that did not want to, but had to approach. And then he fell to his knees before Jesus. There, in that land of the dead, a body at war was forced to bow before life itself. And what came from his mouth was not a prayer, but a hoarse, distorted shriek filled with terror. "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, by God, do not torment me." The sound echoed as if from inside a dark cave. It was not one voice, but many, as if something was speaking from the depths. The disciples looked at each other, understanding nothing, but Jesus stood motionless. He already knew. Before any name was spoken, Before the pigs entered history, before the city gathered or the screaming stopped, Jesus was already in control. The authority of his very presence had destabilized the dominion of darkness, and the demons knew it. The man was still on his knees, but something inside him was twisting, as if the ground were shaking beneath him. Then Jesus broke the silence. He didn't shout, he didn't gesture, he didn't incant anything. Just a question: what is your name? But this was no ordinary question. When Jesus asks something, he isn't seeking information. He is exposing hidden realities. And in that moment, before everyone's eyes, the voice that answered was inhuman, deep, like an echo from a bottomless well. My name is Legion, for we are many. That sentence froze the air. Legion. It wasn't a symbolic expression, it was a spiritual confession. In ancient Rome, a legion was known as an elite army unit. About 6,000 soldiers trained to invade, dominate, and destroy. 6,000 entities inside one man. This wasn't a simple possession. It was an occupation, a spiritual territory taken by organized, disciplined, and ruthless forces. And the most terrifying thing was not their number, but their fear. They were horrified, completely undone by the presence of Jesus. And again they spoke, "I beg you not to torment us." Look closely at this, my friends. Even demons turn to God when they speak to Jesus. They knew who he was. They knew what he could do. Hell has no doubts about the identity of Christ. The ones who doubt are often us. They knew they couldn't resist. They knew they had no authority there, so they began to beg. And their request was terrifying in its own right. Do not send us into the abyss. Let us go into those pigs. Imagine this. Thousands of armed and violent demons begging for permission. Yes, permission. Because the power of Jesus is non-negotiable. He doesn't need to raise his voice. He just needs to be there. In that moment, all of hell was bowing at one man's feet. The air was still. It was as if time had stopped after that last scream. And then Jesus granted that request. With no fanfare, no ceremony, just a silent moment of decision between heaven and darkness. And suddenly the man's body arched as if something were being violently ripped from him. His eyes rolled back, his muscles convulsed as if fighting an invisible shock. And then he fell, collapsing like a wounded soldier on a battlefield. But at that exact moment, a sound came from a distance. A commotion, snorting, the thunder of hooves, a stampede. A few hundred yards away, on the hills, 2,000 pigs that had been grazing peacefully were now in a panic. They began crashing into each other, eyes wide, foaming at the mouth. They ran as if trying to escape something that had entered them, something men couldn't see but creation could feel. It was as if hell was looking for refuge, as if the cast-out demons were thrust into bodies that could not support them. And then came the climax. The 2,000 pigs madly ran down the hill. They rushed in a straight line toward the abyss of the cliff, and without a moment's hesitation threw themselves into the sea. It was a violent sound. First, the bodies crashing into the water, a deep plunge followed by bubbles and then silence. The surface became cloudy, then dark, and the air smelled of salt and death. The herdsmen fell to the ground. They screamed, they cried, they fled. Some ran back to the city in terror. Others were paralyzed, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. It was a miracle, but a miracle that came like an earthquake. The man's liberation cost something visible. It cost a whole herd. It cost the economic peace of the city. It cost the comfort of a region that preferred to keep evil isolated rather than confront it. But in God's eyes, it was not a loss. It was a conquest. Because the value of one soul is greater than the whole world. The wind was still blowing over the water. The pigs no longer grunted. The ground was still dirty with dust, blood, and silence. But there, right in the center of the scene, a miracle was still standing in the heart of a man. The one who for years had lived like an animal was now sitting with his shoulders relaxed, his head held high, and his eyes full of something no one recognized in him: peace. The disciples could hardly believe it. They had seen the blind see, the lepers cleansed, But this was different. They had seen the horror, the chaos, the living darkness in that man's eyes. The same face that before was contorted in rage, now transmitted gentleness. The same body that cut itself with stones now rested. He had returned to himself, and there, at the feet of Jesus, was what remained of the battle. A restored man, a clean soul, a reclaimed field. But not everyone was celebrating. The herdsmen had run to the city, terrified by what they had witnessed, and when the people arrived, they couldn't deny the miracle. They saw the man sitting, clothed and in his right mind, and yet they were afraid. Afraid because the world gets used to its chaos. It prefers to live with the darkness, as long as it's distant and controlled. But now the light was there, evident, present, uncontrollable, and that was disturbing. That's why they asked Jesus, "Please go away." It didn't matter the good that Jesus had done. What mattered was the comfort zone of fear that he threatened. They didn't want more miracles. They wanted stability. They wanted a controlled evil, not a good that transformed everything. And Jesus didn't argue, didn't plead, didn't even explain. He simply turned and walked toward the boat. But a figure stood behind him, with tears in his eyes and a request on his lips. There is something in this story that goes beyond the supernatural, beyond the demons, beyond the pigs, beyond the destruction and the scandal. This is the story of a person who seemed impossible to change, a man no one wanted to get close to, who had lost everything: control, dignity, name, and even his own identity. Someone who was cast aside, condemned to live among the dead because the living had already given up on him. But Jesus did not. Jesus crossed an entire sea, faced a storm, went to a forbidden land for a single soul, for a man no one else wanted to see. And maybe in this exact moment you feel like that, rejected, isolated, as if an invisible legion has taken over your mind, your heart, your emotions, as if no one knows what you live, or worse, as if no one cares. But the God of the Bible cares, and he comes to you. He still crosses territories, goes through storms, and confronts darkness, no matter the cost, to free those the world has considered lost. And when he arrives, all it takes is one word. The same authority that silenced a legion is still alive, still available, and still accessible. The question is, do you want to be free, or will you ask him to step away like the Gadarenes? Jesus turned to get on the boat. The crowd watched him from a distance. The disciples followed him in silence, but behind him were hurried footsteps. It was the man who before had screamed, but now was crying. With tears in his eyes and trembling hands, he begged, "Lord, let me go with you." It was the purest, most common request he could make. "I don't want fame, I don't want explanations, I just want to be close to the one who saved me." But surprisingly, Jesus didn't allow it. He said, "No, go home to your own people and tell them what great things the Lord has done for you." Jesus gave him a mission. The one who was once the shame of the city would now be its voice. The man rose and left, and wherever he went, he told what had happened to him. He spoke of a man who crossed the sea just for him. He spoke of a name that made a spiritual army flee. He spoke of a word that changed everything. And so the former demoniac became the first missionary sent by Jesus among the Gentiles. A living miracle, a walking testimony, proof that God not only frees, but transforms tragedies for eternal purposes. Jesus didn't just cast out a demon. He restored an identity, healed a mind, gave back a voice, and more than that, he entrusted a mission. And maybe today he is doing the same with you. Maybe what you have lived, what you have suffered, what almost destroyed you is not the end of your story. It's just the beginning of a mission that no one expected, but that heaven has already written. Now tell me, do you believe that Jesus still frees people today like he freed that man? Or rather, have you ever felt like you were fighting something invisible and needed Jesus to cross the sea for you? If this story meant something to you, write here in the comments. Lord, free me as you freed that man. Let's pray together. You are not alone. And finally, if you want to continue on this journey, of discovering powerful, life-changing stories like this one, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. That way, we won't miss each other. Every story is one step closer to truth, to hope, and to freedom. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next story.